All right, good morning, everybody. We are on today's daf Tzadi Aleph, Tzadi Beis in Maseches Pesachim. So we got to the mission at the bottom line, bottom word, or last word of Tzadi Yomi Beis. Ha'oinein. Now, ha'oinein is somebody who has a death in the family, a relative, and therefore the obligation is basically upon him to go ahead and bury his dead. Person is obligated to go ahead and bury, and therefore that at a point in time he's basically so this person is einin, someone who has a dead relative, has to bury somebody on Erev Pesach. So he's an einin. Then top of the page, or somebody is searching for a body underneath rubble. V'chein mi shehiftichu lahitzim beis Yisurim, or someone who is locked up in the beis Yisurim, but he's promised today he's supposed to be getting out. V'achayla v'hazakein, one who is sick or one who is elderly. Shehein yichayil lechol b'kazayis, and they are able to go ahead and eat a kazayis. Sheichdin aleha, they're allowed to go ahead and shecht for them. So even though none of them really can partake right now, they'll be able perhaps to do in the evening, such as these people who are currently busy with other things such as the einain and the others. So therefore, you can go ahead and shecht for them. You can go ahead and shecht for them even though they can't eat now. You're going to be able to eat the night of Pesach. So therefore, you can shecht for them and Erev Pesach even though currently they can't eat. But in the evening, eventually, you'll be able to go ahead and partake. Al-kulam in shechtin, and we say for them, Al-kulam in shechtin alem b'fnei atzman. However, for all of them, we don't shech for them for themselves, because they perhaps might not be able to eat, and therefore you can't go ahead and just shech the Korban Pesach just for somebody, let's say, who's in jail, who's supposed to be getting out, because it's uncertain as to whether that will be the case, or someone who's in onain, he might be tamei, right? Person who's matami tumas meis has to wait 7 days, so he won't be fit, but right now he's not tamei. So all these people can check for him. The Gemara will go through these cases. Because perhaps in the Korban Pesach will be brought, it will be possible. Therefore, therefore, if a psul comes upon them for whatever reason, they're too sick to eat later on also, or the guy became tamei, right? He was obligated to bury, or the one looking for a corpse underneath, right? And he found the body. It turns out he became tamei, and all of a sudden, so at night he can't eat it. All those cases, he's pater me'asos pesach sheni. He's pater me'asos sheni chutz min mefkech hazagal shehu tamei mitchila. So except for the person who's going ahead and clearing the rubble, looking for a body. Perhaps there might be a body underneath it, and he's clearing the rubble, and it becomes tamei. So then, in such a case, he is not pater. He's not exempt from Pesach Sheni. He has to go ahead and bring a Korban Pesach for Pesach Sheni, and the Gemara will explain what this difference is. So let's see the Gemara. Zak the Gemara. Amar Rabba Barhuna Amar Rabbi Yechon Lo Yishanu Ela Beis Yisurim Da'akum. That which we said a person is promised to go out of jail, right? We don't go ahead. We include him in the shechita of he be part of a group. However, we don't go ahead and shecht completely on his behalf by himself. That's only if it's talking about he's be removed from a goyish jail. But if it's a Beis Yisrael, then we can go ahead and we rely upon their word that he will be getting out of holding. We can check for him by himself. Since they promised that he's supposed to be get out, then we trusted the pasuk says so the pasuk says over there that the Bnei Yisrael, right, they won't speak lies, right? They won't say any lies, and therefore, since they say he's going to get out today, therefore we trust he's going to get out today, and therefore even though he's not around during the Korban Pesach, go ahead and check the Korban Pesach on his behalf, and in the evening he'll be at the Seder to go ahead and eat his kazayis Korban Pesach. And Amar Rav Chizda, that's only referring to if it is located outside of Beis Pagi, right? Beis Pagi is basically the end of Yerushalayim. Then if it is within, if he is being held even in a Goyish jail within Beis Pagi, Sheikhtin Aleim, you can go ahead you shech for him. Why? If they ask him, my time. Afshar Dam Tulei, because you can go ahead and bring it to him, he'll eat it there because he's fit to go ahead and eat it, right? If he was being held in a jail, right, outside Yerushalayim, so then even if they don't let him out, he won't be able to eat. But if he remains in, right, then he can't eat Korban Pesach. But if he's in Yerushalayim, right, he's not Tameh, so go ahead and bring his Korban Pesach and let him eat it while he's still in jail. That's his, that'll be his dinner that evening. Fine, 2 dots. Therefore, so he said if a psul happens to them, they're patur from Pesach Sheni, except for the person who is going ahead and basically searching rubble and looking for a body, right? A building collapses, looking underneath for a body. Now, if you go ahead and you find the body, all of a sudden you find the body, boom, the guy is tameh because he's tameh to mesmeis, and which is 7 days, and obviously then he won't be fit to eat that evening. So Amar Rabba Barachana, Amar Rabbi Yechanan. We're talking about basically the area that he's searching is basically around area, like one large, circular area or whatever square area, just one area in the middle where there's a body underneath, and basically he's on top of it the entire time, just searching lower, and therefore he's vadai going to become tummy. But if it is a longer area that he's checking, right? It's just long area that he's checking, then he's sheni. Why? Why is he patur Pesach Sheni? You say because you can say he was torah during the time of the shechita. So therefore, if it was round and only he finds the body later on, it turns out that he was tummy the whole time because it was underneath him. So therefore, he's tummy. But if it's a long area, then it could be during the zman of the shechita, right? And the offering of the Korban Pesach, he was kosher, and therefore, since it was offered properly, he just couldn't eat it. That causes one to be patur from bringing Pesach Sheni, right? Because remember, the main part is to be yotzei, offering of the Korban Pesach. Yes, one does have to go ahead and be fit to eat it and eat it, but if for whatever reason there's some sort of einus, well, since he later on, Mishnah later on, if some sort of einus that happens that prevents him from eating it, he's patur from Pesach Sheni. And Tanya Mehalchisim learned Rabbi Shimon beno shel Rabbi Yechim Baruch Omer mefakech begal eating patur, right? So he said if a person goes ahead and he goes ahead and he's checking underneath the the rubble. So itim pater and itim chayiv. Sometimes he's pater, sometimes he's chayiv. Ketzat, how so? So gal agul, but he says tumatachta. If it's rounded and he finds it, the area that he's searching is rounded, and then he finds it underneath him, then he's chayiv. Then he's chayiv to bring Pesach Sheni. Why? Because it was underneath him the whole time. He was from the whole time because the tuma goes up. However, galarich, but if it's a long one, then it says tuma tachtav, then he finds it towards the end, right? 100 yards in, he finds it. Pater. Why? Because who says it was underneath him before up until the zman of shchita, he could have been tahor, and therefore he could have been yaitse. Fine. Naya Mishnah. Mishnah says we're in the Mishnah on Tzadi Aleph, Amud Aleph, 4 lines down of the wide lines. Ein sheichtin as a Pesach ala yachid divi Rabbi Yehuda. Says Rabbi Yehuda, one does not go ahead and shech the Korban Pesach for a yachid. Korban Pesach should be brought in a group, and therefore we don't do it for one single individual. We'll explain why in the Gemara. That is the opinion of Rabbi Yehuda, learns from a pasuk. Rabbi Yasi mater. Rabbi Yasi says mutter. Ve'afilu chabura, and now, by the way, ve'afilu chabura shel meya she'enon yichol nachal kazayis ein shech lehem. And not only that, so he says that you can go ahead and check them for 100. However, right, if let's say there's not a kazayis of meat, right, so then you don't go ahead and shecht it for a very large group, right? If you look at the Rashi, just Rashi real quick for a second. I'm just looking at the Rashis over there. So he says Rabbi Yasi, then Rabbi Yasi, this is still Rabbi Yasi who says it's mutter to go ahead and check for an individual. He says Klamar loy tayim also the Pesach ela beachilo yachid v'yachol lechol kazayis sheichtin aleh meya ve'ein yachol lechol kazayis bein kulam. Right, ain sheikh lehem. Right, but if there's 100 and no one will have a kazayas, then you wouldn't be able to go. Right, so the whole issue is that you have to be able to, when you shecht it, has to be at least a kazayas for a person. So there's one person that's actually good, so there's no problem. But it's 100 people, then each one doesn't have a kazayas and therefore wouldn't be any good. One does not go ahead and basically make a chabura, a shecht of a group of women, servants, and katan. And we'll soon see what that is referring to, why we can't. Is it all them in one? Is it them together? Is it them alone? So that was the end of the Mishnah. So let's, in the Gemara is going to explain. So let's see the Zak the Gemara. Tana Rabbanan. How do we know, as the Taz Rabbi Yehuda stated, that one cannot go ahead and shech the korban pesach for a single individual? Tamaloymar lo yisucha lizbach as a pesach be'echad. Divi Rabbi Yehuda, because the pasuk says, right? Pasuk brought on the side. The second pasuk brought on the side. I'm just going to read it on the side. The pasuk says, lo yisucha lizbach as a pesach be'echad sha'arecha asher Hashem lakecha no yisein lach. Right? It says you can't go ahead and offer the Pesach be'echad b'sharecha. It says be'echad in one, sharecha of your gates, one in one gate. So it means be'echad, right? So he darshans from there that you can't go ahead and shech the korban Pesach for a single individual. You need a chabura, divi Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Yosi Aimer, yachid v'yachal lechol. If it's a single individual and he's able to go ahead and eat it, then sheichdin alav. Then you can go ahead and shech it, asara. But if it's 10 people, be'en yachal lechol. But let's say there's 10 people and they can't eat. Let's say there's not enough meat or whatever it is. Lechol ein sheich alim. Then you can't shech for them. So according to Rabbi Yosi, it doesn't make a difference in how many people. It makes a difference as whether the chabura will be fit to go ahead and eat each one a kazayas or not. Rabbi Yosi. Hi, be'echad me'avile. What does he do with the word echad? Right? Rabbi Yehuda darshan the word be'echad means you can't shech for an individual. So what does Rabbi Yosi do with the word be'echad? My avile. He needs a Rabbi Shimon. The tiny Rabbi Shimon Oimer minayin lizavech as a pesach bebamas yachid b'shas iser habamos shehu b'loisasei. How do we know that? Remember, there was a time when private mizbeachs were permitted for certain offerings, right? And throughout Bnei Yisrael, then it became usher. So how do we know that one who wants to go ahead and bring us korban pesach during a time, right, when the bamas were forbidden? In other words, they were no longer permitted for private offerings. So how do we know if one brought us korban pesach on a private offering, it's no good? He violates a loisase. Tamaloymar. Therefore, it says loisucha lizbach as a pesach be'echa b'sharecha. Right? Don't go ahead and offer the korban pesach be'echad sharecha, right? When there's one gate. What does it mean when there's one gate? When there's one gate to go and offer your korban pesach. In other words, what do you see over here? That when there's only one gate, i.e., all the other bamos are forbidden, and the only gate to go ahead and is basically the gate of the Beis Hamikdash and to offer there. So then it says, don't offer it. So therefore, if you offer it at and a bama, and a private bama, then you're chayiv alav, you get malchus. And yachal af b'shas heter habamas kain. You might think, right? Maybe even during a time when bamas were permitted, it would also be forbidden. Therefore it says becha b'sharecha. Therefore it says only with one gate. Lo amru el b'shas shekol Yisrael nichnasim b'sharecha. Right? It's only this lab is only said when all of Bnei Yisrael only uses one gate, i.e., only the Beis Hamikdash and the Mizbeach over there. Rabbi Yosi, Rabbi Yosi, how does he know this? Excuse me, for Rabbi Yehuda, Rabbi Yehuda, because that was Rabbi Yosi. Rabbi Yehuda, right? Something like it's complicated when it's just Reish Yud and you have machlokas between Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Yosi, right? Rabbi Yehuda Haminale. So how does he know this? So it's hard to describe. He learns both, right? He learns both of the same pasuk, right? He says be'echad and sharecha. Rabbi Yosi, mimai de lahachi kamar, and Rabbi Yosi would say this, mimai de lahachi kamar, Rabbi Shimon, right? So he says, so Rabbi Yosi only learns one. So Rabbi Yosi learns one. So there's two drashas there. One is the drasha, don't offer for a yachid, and the other drasha is don't offer it when bamos are forbidden. So why does Rabbi Yosi choose the bamos are forbidden drasha and not choose the offering only for an individual? Rabbi Yosi, so he says the haki kamar Rabbi Shimon, the kamar Rabbi Yehuda. Also, maybe it's like the drasha of Rabbi Yehuda that just telling you that it's forbidden to go ahead and offer a korban pesach on behalf of an individual. So he said no. See, the pasuk says ish lefi achlo. Right? It says ish, right? Ish, which is an individual, if yachlo, right? According to his to his eating. So therefore, since it says ish, we see that a korban pesach can be brought on behalf of an individual. Fine. So Rami le Rav Ukva bar Chinana mi parshin le Rava. So ask Rav Ukva bar Chinana for parshin to Rava. So what was the kasha? So mi Amar Rabbi Yehuda ain't sheichnas a pesach al yachid. Does Rabbi Yehuda say ain't sheichnas a pesach al yachid? I've Ramina as a kasha. It says isha Berishon sheichten lev v'nei asma, v'sheni oisin asat tefillah lacher. David Rabbi Huda. So by Rabbi Huda, right? So Rabbi Huda says that. So they had this brisa, which brings down the opinion of Rabbi Huda, that you can go ahead and shecht for a woman on herself for Pesach Rishon, and Pesach Sheni oisina osa tefela. She can be the secondary one. Now, we don't shecht on behalf of her, but we shecht that she can be part of the group, right? So what do you see from here? On the Pesach Rishon, you can even shecht only for a woman. So if you only shech for only a woman, certainly only shech only for a guy. So we see Rabbi Huda holds you can even shech for an individual. Summer Lays, he says, no, don't say means that we're shechting on behalf of a single woman. It means for women, i.e. a group of women, that you're allowed to go ahead and shech on their behalf. You just can't shech for an individual. So Rabbi Huda says the shita, so you can't shech for an individual, but if it's a bunch of women, you can't go ahead and shech. So the Gemara says, Amar Lay. So he says, wait, you're allowed to go ahead and have a chabura full of nashim. Well, what do you mean, right? We just read the Mishnah, 15 lines up. It says, you said you can't go ahead and make a chabura of women, avadim, servants, and ktanim. So it says, my lab nashim l'chudai, v'avadim l'chudai, v'ktanim l'chudai. It doesn't mean each one like as a group. Right, you can't offer Korban Pesach for 5 women. You can't offer Pesach for 5 avadim. You can't offer Korban Pesach for 5 ketanim. So no, nashim v'avadim ketanim. No, it means that which we say nashim v'avadim ketanim. Nashim what it means together. Nashim avadim. You can't have nashim avadim. They'll eat together. Servants and nashim. Why? Mishum tiflus. Right, because they'll go ahead and perhaps they're mixing together. Perhaps there's going to be some sort of avera that will happen between the avadim and the nashim. And katanim, the avadim, and you want to have katanim avadim, right? You have a bunch of 7-year-olds and a bunch of servants. Also, mishum pirtzusa, right, top of the page, because of also pirtzusa. Rashi says the mishkav zachar, right? Perhaps they'll be molested or something, right? Something bad will come from the combination of katanim and avadim. So therefore, that which we say in a Mishnah, you can't do it for avadim, nashim and katanim. It was talking about mixing them together. But you want to have a group of nashim or a group of avadim, right? Because they're chayiv in the mitzvah also, or katanim, then that is permissible to go ahead and do it. Fine. But it answers up that we see that according to Rabbi Yehuda, you can never offer a Korban Pesach on behalf of an individual. All right, top line, Gufa. On Tzadi Alpha Beis, now we're going to discuss this three-way Machlokas. Gufa, Isha berishon sheichtin aleb v'nei atzma, uv'sheni oisin oisa tefela le'acherem divrei Rabbi Yehuda. When it comes to a woman, you can check for her. Now we're going to be discussing the when you say Rishon, it's referring to the normal Pesach, and Sheni is referring to Pesach Sheni, right? Pesach Sheni is when a person is unavailable to go ahead and bring in the Rishon, right? That's they were Tameh or they were too far away, so they go ahead and they bring it their Korban Pesach on a month later, on the 15th of Iyar. So. We shecht for her and herself. However, but however, it's Pesach Sheni, then she must be in a group of others. Rabbi Huda, and we explain it doesn't mean for a woman by herself. Rather, it is referring to a group of women. And Rabbi Yaisi Aimer Isha b'Sheni sheichten alev v'nei atzma ve'in tzarich lama rishon. He says no. When it comes to a woman, Kona Rabbi Yaisi, right? It's very liberal, right? You can even do it for a group of women in Pesach Sheni. And certainly, I don't need to tell you that they also shech for them for Pesach. And Rabbi Shimon and Rabbi Shimon is the third shita. Isha b'rishon ayisin asat tefela le'acherem. When it comes to the first one, a woman has to be basically part of a group of men for the first korban for Pesach for the regular korban Pesach. And Sheni, when it comes to Pesach Sheni, ein sheichten ala kol ikar. Then they can't be included at all. So that was the three machlokas between Rabbi Yehuda, Rabbi Yaisi, and Rabbi Shimon, and now we're going to be in the psukim to support them. So, what's the machlokas here? So now we're going to go through each one and explain them using the psukim of the Torah. So Rabbi Yehuda Sabar, he says mixas nefashos. Now Rabbi Yehuda, right? Rabbi Yehuda says, let's just go back. Rabbi Yehuda's shita was Pesach Rishon it can be just for the women. And Pesach Sheni, right? Then she is tefela. She can only be included with men, but we don't do it for our own. So therefore, he says nefashos ve'afilu nashim. Even women, it says nefashos, a nefesh, right? Nefesh, it doesn't say male or female. So therefore, according to the number of the household, the number of souls, therefore, women is no different than a man. If that's the case, Rabbi Yehuda, shouldn't the same halacha apply by Pesach Sheni? So the pasuk says, "Chatu yisa ish shahu." So it says he will go ahead if he didn't bring the Karban Pesach, he'll carry that. The man will carry that devera, and therefore he'll bring a Pesach Sheni. So it says ish in ishalo. It says only the man and not the woman. So the man goes so therefore only a man goes for Pesach Sheni, not the woman, and therefore. Basically, if she wants to go ahead and join, she has to basically find a man and join him in his Karban Pesach. If that's the case, if that's the case, maybe she can't even be secondary. Maybe she can't even join a man, and she's completely locked out to bring Pesach Sheni. Hani. Therefore, it says Therefore, it says when referring to the Pesach Sheni, the pasuk says all the halachas of the first one apply to the second one. So kol chukas haPesach, right? Tasu asa, right? So that is teaching you that all the halachas, meaning a woman can join. So therefore, a woman can't go ahead and bring a lechatchila, right? A group of women, but they can join if men are doing it. So that was the shita of Rabbi Yehuda. Fine. Now comes the very liberal, right? Nowadays, right, the liberal opinion, right? The women can do it for the second one, and certainly the first one. Rabbi Yosi my time. The pasuk says, "Berishon meitzat nefashos ve'afilu isha." So we bring the pasuk of, it says, according to the souls, and the souls are women is included in souls, and therefore they're included in that. The Pesach Sheni, it says by Pesach Sheni v'nichrosa hanefesh ahim Yisrael. It says over there, if you don't go ahead and do it, it says v'nichsa nefesh. Once again, refers to nefesh ahim Yisrael, nefesh v'afilu nashim. It says therefore it says nefesh even women. So if that's the case, ve'ela chatu yisa ish. What do you do the pasuk of when it says over there, if the man sins and doesn't bring a Pesach Rishon, it says chita ish. Why say male? So it says no. Hahu lemiyute. That comes to exclude my lemiyute kot mikares, to exclude a cotton from kares. That now normally one doesn't go ahead and bring. He does the aseh. He's chayiv a kares, right? He's chayiv kares for not doing it. So that's only referring to an ish or an isha. It's not excluding an isha. She's the same as man. Rather, it comes to exclude a cotton. Fine. The Rabbi Shimon, and now that was the second opinion. Now Rabbi Shimon, who holds that on the first one, the woman must find a group of men. And on the second one, Rabbi Shimon says she's not part of the chabur at all. So Rabbi Shimon ksiv barishon. What's the reason? It says ish. It says over there ish, and we'll soon see which pasuk of ish. It says ish a couple of times. So ish, so ish in ish alo. It says therefore by the Karban Pesach, you can only go ahead and only you shecht for a man and not a woman. Therefore, only a woman can be part of a man's group and not on her own. So if that's the case, it says ish and not woman. Maybe they're completely pater, right? So namilo. So hanilem michsas nefashos. Therefore, it says the word michsas nefashos according to the house. In other words, according to the souls, which is litfela. That even if they're secondary, they can be joined. So if that's the case, so maybe just like they're secondary on the Pesach Rishon, so too Pesach Sheni can also be secondary. So therefore, mirachmana b'sheni dechsiv chato yisa ish. Therefore, it says by the second one, right? He will go ahead and he will have an avera, right? He will have his chait. If he doesn't bring the first one, he has to bring a second one. It says referred to a ish in ish alo, and therefore it says only a man and not a woman.
A quick question.
Yeah.
If we say a woman, now we're in Purim, woman experienced the Nes, so she is chayevet b'Megillah. Here, right. She experienced Yetziat Mitzrayim. She's chayevet also, no? I would think there is a high correlation here. So, you see my tana? So maybe not Pesach Sheni, but Pesach Rishon. She's mechayev, no?
Right. So we have the concept, right? Afhein ayu bo'isa nes, right? They are also involved with the nes, and therefore, since they're involved, they experience redemption just like the men, right? So the Gemara is going to touch on that point soon.
Okay.
Right now, they're referring to maybe by eating the Karban Pesach is different. Maybe that's not exactly the mitzvah of the nes, right? Like Megillah, the entire mitzvah is that. So maybe but we'll soon see that that there's the eating of the matzah and there's the not eating of the chametz, right? Which could basically essentially be, that could be the nace, or that could be the observing, right, of the nace versus eating the carbon pesach itself. Maybe eating the carbon pesach is just a man thing according to the pasuk, right? That's a good question. We'll soon see, the Gemara will soon touch upon the chiyuv of that. Very good question. So Gemara says now, so which one we excluding for? So if we're talking about the obligation, so in terms of the current Pesach of the Rishons, so we said that the first one we can't go ahead and make the woman do it. So you're telling me that the first one that obligates the second one, you have to tell me that it should be obligated. So elav mitfela. Rather, what's coming to teach you is that even on the second one, it means that by tefillah, they're not obligated to. So according to Rabbi Shimon, right, the woman is only tefillah, she's only secondary, she can only join a chabura for the Pesach Rishon, but when it comes to Pesach Sheni, she does not even join a chabura. If she misses the first one, according to Rabbi Shimon, she is done, all right? And that he learned from the pasuk of Ish. So my Ish, to come to Rabbi Shimon. So which pasuk of Ish is Rabbi Shimon referring to? So if you say from the pasuk of v'yichulahem ish selavesavos selabayis, if you say from the pasuk of each man should go ahead and take a seh, right, sheep from the house. So when we actually use that drush of ish from another pot, we use it for another drush. Rabbi Yitzchak, the Omar ish zeicha ve'en katan zeicha. We actually learned that from the drasha of kinyanim, right? It says v'yichulahem ish, right? So only an ish can take and a katan can't, right? So it has to be a man, an adult, and that. So we have a different drasha. It's nothing to do with Karm Pesach itself. It has to do with acquiring, right? It says ish zeich vein katan zeicha ella miish lefiachlo. Maybe the pasuk of ish lefiachlo. Hamid Rabbi Yasi sevelek Rabbi Shimon, right? Like we said earlier that he holds like I remember when I was preparing this, I should have pointed out this pasuk and I forgot to do it. Oh well. All right. So we said Rabbi Shimon savar law Rabbi Yasi, right? So we have this pasuk on Amud Aleph of Ish Lefi Achlo Tachaisu Alaseh, right? We had over there. We just find where the pasuk is brought. This is by the Gimel over here, right? So we brought the pasuk, right? We said earlier, right? So right, we had the whole machlokas between Rabbi Huda and Rabbi Yossi earlier, and we said we're talking about the sharecha when they go into one shar, right? To go into to one gate. So the Gemara asked in Amud Aleph, says, who said this came for this reason, right? It came for the reason of Rabbi Huda to exclude individual. So he said, no, it says ish to teach you a single, that even an individual can go ahead and bring Korban Pesach. Now, all right, so that was what I meant to point out earlier. So we see for the pasuk of ish, we learned the drasha of ish over there on Amud Aleph was that according to Rabbi Yossi, right? Rabbi Yossi says that you can bring a Korban Pesach on behalf of an individual, which, as you recall, Rabbi Huda says you can't bring it for an individual. So now over here, we're saying, by the fact, like Rabbi Yossi holds like Rabbi Shimon also holds like Rabbi Yossi, and therefore he uses this pasuk of ish this pasuk of ish can't be coming to go ahead and teach you that it has to be a man, not a woman, right? Because he learns it has to be that you can bring a carbon on behalf of a single, of an ish, of an individual, and not plural. So he said, because we stated earlier, right, that I just explained that we shach the Pesach for a yachid. He says, no, if that's the case, right? Let's just say lefiachlo. My ish, why I say ish lefiachlo? Shmami no tarti. Therefore, to learn both of them. Fine. Now, Kaman Ozla ha de Omar Rabbi Elazar. Who does this hold like? That which Rabbi Elazar teaches, Isha berishon chayva. A woman, her responsibility for the Pesach Rishon is a chova, it's an obligation, right? Regular Pesach. The Sheni, if she misses that one, all of a sudden, right, there's Pesach Sheni. The Sheni Rishus, and it's a Rishus for her, right? She can do it if she wants to. The Doich is the Shabbos, and any halachas of it is Doich is Shabbos. So Gemara says, I understand. E Rishus, so my Doich is the Shabbos. It doesn't even make sense, right? If it's a Rishus, Why should be Deicha Shabbos, right? We know the only things that are chiyuv would be Deicha Shabbos, but not a Rishus, right? Ela Ema b'Sheni Rishus, rather than say like this. Sheni is Rishus. The Pesach Sheni, the offer Pesach Sheni is a Rishus. The Rishon Chayva, and on the first one is a Chayva. The Deicha is a Shabbos, right? The first is a Deicha Shabbos. So now, anyways, who is this? Come on, who is this like? This is Rabbi Yehuda. This is Rabbi Yehuda, who was the first opinion, who said that that for the first one, right, you can do it for a group of women because it's a chayva, and the second one they're tefela, and therefore you can only join a group of men because it's a rishus. So we say that's like Rabbi Yehuda. And Amar Rabbi Yaakov, Amar Rabbi Yechon, ein oisin chabur shekulam gerim shema yidaktu bo v'yavo l'dei psul. Right, you can't go ahead and bring a Korban Pesach on behalf of only gerim. Right, why? Because they're very medaktik in the mitzvos. Right, they're very medaktik, and they're very careful, and therefore they might go ahead and apostle their Korban Pesach, and therefore the shechita and the zrika will be done, and it will not be eaten, and it will come to a psul. Fine. Right, and Rashi says, right, what does it mean, the daktubo, right? It says, Mishum she'enan b'nei Torah yachmir olav l'daktiv yifsol al chinam, right? They'll be too machmer, right? They'll make up halachas, they'll be too machmer, they won't really know the halachas, and then they'll passel it for no reason. Fine. So 2 dots. Tana Rabbanan. Pesach u'matzah u'mara, right? This is Yigal touched upon this a little bit earlier. So Pesach matzah u'mara, Barishon chayva, on the first day, we'll still say Barishon, right? The first one sounds like chayva, mikan ve'elech rishus. Afterwards, it's a rishus. Now, normally what we have in Masechus Pesachim, we talk about Barishon, mikan ve'elech. It sounds like the first day of Yontif versus the rest of the day of Pesach, the rest of the days of Pesach. So it says Pesach matzah u'mara on the first is a chov, and the rest from there on is rishus. So Rabbi Shimon Omer, ba'anashim means like ba'anashim chayv, ba'anashim rishus. And he says by men it's a chiyuv, and the women it's a rishus. So what's he going? So which one is Rabbi Shimon referring to? Ilema Pesach. If he's talking about the Pesach, so Pesach Kol Shiva Miika, right? You're talking that they have the Korban Pesach Kol Shiva, right? All 7 days is a rishus. Miika, there's no such thing. You don't bring the Korban Pesach after day 1, right? There's no such thing, right? Ella, rather, what's he talking about? A matzah and mara. He's referring to matzah and mara. Maybe the matzah and mara is a chiyuv on the first night, and then afterwards it's a rishus, and only that it's only the men, not the women. Same as Sefer. It says the Sefer says Rabbi Shimon about Nashim Chayv and Nashim Rishus. It says all this obligation only in the men, not the women. So last later Rabbi Shimon Hadama Rabbi Elazar. Rabbi Shimon does not hold that which Rabbi Elazar teaches. Nashim Chayavos be'achilas matzah devar Torah. Right? Women are obligated in achilas matzah midaraisa. Why? Shnei the pasuk says, "Lo yiseichel alav chametz shivas yamim." It says, "Thou shalt not have chametz upon it, right, for 7 days." Teichel of matzahs. Instead, eat matzah. So what do you learn from there? Kol sheyishnu b'bal teichel. Anybody who's obligated not to go ahead and eat chametz, yishnu b'kum echel matzah, is obligated to go ahead and eat matzah. V'hani nashim, and women, however the yishnu b'bal teichel chametz, since they're obligated not to eat chametz, any loisa say applies to everybody, not just men. Any loisa say applies to men and women. So yesham b'kum echel matzah. Therefore, they're also obligated in eating matzah. So it's a deraisa. It's connected, right? It's connected. Since they're obligated not to eat chametz, they're also obligated to eat it, right? We have some of the drushes by Shabbos. Since they're obligated in the leisa, they're obligated in the assays, right? So ela ema, rather learn like this: Pesach matzah maror berishon chayva. Pesach matzah maror is in the beginning is a chayva. Mikan the elech rishus, and after that is rishus. And Rabbi Shimon Omer Pesach ba'anashim chayva v'nashim rishus. And therefore, Rabbi Shimon says, no, Pesach ba'anashim is a chov, but Rabbi Shimon goes l'shitaso to say that for women that the Korban Pesach is only a rishus. They can join in a chebura, but they are not obligated themselves. And nafka be right. You can't go ahead and shecht a Korban Pesach on behalf of only a group of women. Fine. Mishnah. Mishnah on the bottom of Tzadi Aleph.
Anaya Mishnah.
Einain. Tayvel. The Eichel es Pischai. L'erev. Avaloi b'kadshim. An Einain, we mentioned the previous Mishnah. So an Einain, a person who has a loved one who is obligated to go ahead and bury, right? Either a spouse, child, parent, right? So he's Tayvel, right? So he buries the dead that day. So he's Tayvel, assuming he doesn't become Tami, right? And then he can eat his Korban Pesach that night. but not kachim. You can't go ahead and have kachim at night. So the Gemara is going to explain, right, that normally, right, there's a shaila of an einain, right, if we're geyser on him, if aninus is minatara midiraban, right, that which we say a person is an einain, he's patur for mitzvahs, right, we decree that he's tameh, right, all those situations is it deraisa or deraban. So l'chayra we say that during the day, right, that during the day he's normally midaraisa, there is aninus minatara, and therefore he's completely, right, he's out of it. But at night it's only midarabanan he's tameh, right, if he didn't touch the dead body, right, and only at night midarabanan he's an onain. But for the sake of the Korban Pesach, which is one who does not bring Korban Pesach would be chayiv kares. So therefore he's allowed to eat the Korban Pesach. So therefore we can shech for him an onain who's not going to become tameh, right, by touching the body. That well, shech the Korban Pesach. We know you're busy today, but at night you can eat Leil Pesach. You can go ahead and eat the Korban Pesach. But regular kachim, we don't say okay. You can go ahead, and since aninus is drabanan, only at night is midrabanan. We say that no, since eating kachim is never an obligation like it is by the Korban Pesach. Therefore, if it's other kachim, you want to go ahead and partake of other foods of kachim that you cannot go ahead and partake of. And hashameya al meso, similarly, one who hears al meso, right? He had a loved one, right? Once again, who was someone who was supposed to, let's say, sit shiva for. They died longer than 30 days ago. So and then he finds out. So that day is like one day of avelus, of aninus. So the day that he hears about it, right? That someone died, 6 months ago, right? Or or one is going to go ahead and basically moving the body of a loved one also has halachas similar to aninus, right? Toivel ve'eichel b'kachim. Those you go ahead and you can be toivel and eat kachim. Why? Because that which we say the aninus there of a person who hears about someone who died a while ago, or gathering the bones, is not the same as the day one dies and becomes an onain midaraisa. Rather, as only onain derabanan, and therefore, since there's aninus derabanan, therefore at night he's no longer even midrabanan. He's no longer tameh midrabanan, and therefore he can go ahead and partake of kachim. And ger shenis gayer be'erev Pesach. Right now, a ger who converted on erev Pesach, Beis Shammai oimrim. Toivel ve'eichel es pischo l'erev. He goes ahead and he's toivel, right, part of his gerus, and he eats his Korban Pesach that night. So he became a Jew that day, and he eats Korban Pesach that night. No, ha paresh mina orla ke paresh mina kefer. Right? He says no. There's a rule. One who separates mina orla, right, from his foreskin, i.e., a person who gets a bris milah, is like a person who separates from a body that he just buried. And just like when you bury a body, right, you are tameh because you came in contact with the body, and therefore you're tameh for 7 days. So too, one who has a bris milah is also tameh, right, for 7 days. And therefore, if you go ahead and you're misgayer on the 14th of Nisan, right, you can't eat it at night because you have to wait till the 21st of Nisan, which is too late. You have to wait for Pesach Sheni, right? Well, actually, we'll soon see. I don't want. Right.
Rabbi, yeah. Is there, besides Korban Pesach, what other kachim does someone eat when on Pesach? Is it only Korban Pesach?
Let's say a person is middle of the year, right? And he wants to eat shlamim that night, or he wants to eat another korban, right?
Oh, so nothing to do with Pesach.
Right.
Well, can't it also be like the Shalmei Simcha that they brought during Pesach that they?
Right. That's other kachim, whether that could be eaten or not. So over here, right. So correct. Any one of those, but this is saying that since this aninus, the onain, is that which we said when the ninus is deraisa. So, and therefore normally the halach is if the ninus during the day is deraisa, the night is midrabanan. But that midrabanan, the Korban Pesach will override. Okay, but other kachim will not. But if the aninus during the day is derabanan, then there is no he's not an onain at night, even midrabanan, and therefore you can go ahead and eat kachim. So it's just like one level down, and therefore, since there's only an asay to eat kachim, there's a mitzvah asay to eat kachim, but there is no, there's no issue of kares, in order you have to eat the kachim. If you don't eat your shlamim, then you're there's right, that doesn't exist, and therefore, you could partake of kachim when there is no right tuma derabanan from aninus at night. So Beis Hillel says a bris milah, right, is like, you when one gets we'll soon see why with the gzeres. Bris milah would basically say you're tummy for 7 days. Fine, let's see the Gemara. So my time, what's the reason why we say the first halacha that taiva echas pischa be'erev benat kodshim? So Gemara says, because Anina's Delilah Dirabanan, because the Anina's at night is only Midirabanan. The Gabi Pesach, let me do Divirehem B'Makom Kares. When it comes to the Karim Pesach, we don't say, okay, this is Dirabanan, and you can't bring the Karim Pesach. Rather you bring the Karim Pesach because one who does not bring Karim Pesach would be Chayv Kares. However, Gabi Kodshim, when it comes to Kodshim, Midu Divirehem B'Makom Ase. They'll say, no, we still leave this Anina's Delilah Dirabanan at night, and therefore you can't go ahead and eat Kodshim. And Hashameya al Meso, one who goes ahead and hears, right, he had a loved one who died, or he's gathering the bones and he's removing a grave, right? So Malaki that Samos, what do you mean he becomes tummy? So Gemara says, Ema Shalikto at Samos, right? Basically, he got others to go ahead and do it. He wasn't himself, he didn't do it himself, he wasn't tummy. Rather, he was still tahor, so therefore that which he was tamei was only through the aninus, being an onain, which is the gzera of being a tamei, and not anything else. And then we say gershin is gayer, a person who converts. So Amar Rav Chana Rav Yechran machlekes be'orel nachri. That which he says, right? You separate from your orla, right? From your foreskin is like is like you become. You separate from your orla, you become tamei for 7 days. It's only referring to an orel nachri, i.e., when a person is basically converting. The Beis Hillel Sari Gezerah Shema Yitame L'Shana Haba V'Yomar Ishtaka Miloi Tavalti V'Achalti. Right? Maybe what's going to happen is a guy goes ahead and he converts, and he goes to the mikvah, and he remembers that he went to the mikvah, and that night he had the Korban Pesach. So the following year, let's say he becomes tamei tumas meis, right? He becomes tamei tumas meis on erev Pesach. He'll say, "Oh, I remember." Last year, I went to the mikvah and I ate the Korban Pesach at night. So to now, I'll go to the mikvah and eat Korban Pesach at night. Well, it's not true. You have to wait. If you become tamei, right, by touching a corpse or something, you have to wait 7 days, right? So therefore, since we don't want him to confuse of going to the mikvah and then eating at night, Beis Hillel says you can't do it. So therefore, he'll misrule and say I can go ahead and eat even though I became tamei and eat the Korban Pesach. And he won't realize, right? There was a difference. The reason is because the last year, even though you were tamei when you went to the mikvah and you were okay, it's because a nachri cannot become tamei, right? However, but now he can't be makabel tuma, and therefore just going to the mikvah does not clear you from your problems. Beis Shammai says no, like Gerzina, we're not geyser. In this case of a Arel Yisrael, Divir Akol, so no, but when it comes to even a Nachri, you don't have to wait 7 days according to Beis Shammai. However, when it comes to an Arel Yisrael, right, a person for whatever reason did not have a bris milah, and then he has a bris milah, Divir Akol, everyone agrees, Taiva Ve'echel Piskol Erev, V'loi Gazrin Arel Yisrael, Misham Arel Nachri. And therefore, we don't say Gzeira, that, well, since if a guy had a bris milah to become a Jew, he has to wait 7 days, right? So too, a Jew had a bris milah for whatever reason, right? He got out of Russia and finally he had his bris milah, right? So we don't say that, and therefore the Arel Yisrael, everyone agrees he can be taivel and eat his Korban Pesach at night. Fine. And Tanei Malchus is going to learn Amar Rabbi Shimon ben Elazar lo yinechlu Beis Shammai Beis Hillel al Arel Yisrael shetavi v'eichel es piskol erev. Everyone agrees that if it was a Jew who went ahead and got a bris milah, that he doesn't have to wait 7 days, and he just goes ahead and goes to be taivel and eats his Korban Pesach at night. Alman nachlaku al Arel nachri. What do they argue? They argue regarding a person who's converting, and he has a bris milah. Shebei Shammai oimrim taivel v'echas piskol erev. They hold you go ahead and be taivel and eat bris milah at night. Beis Hillel oimrim parish min orla kaparish min akever. Right, like we said in the Mishnah, one who goes ahead and separates from his.
So Bet Hillel looking from the Orla point of view. So if a Jew didn't have Brit Milah and he does it after 13, when he has Chiyuv, he also have to wait a week. Doesn't matter if you are...
No. When we say by Yisrael, we said that
by Israel, doesn't matter Israel, because Bet Hillel looks at the Orla as Tameh. So now you have to wait a week. They don't care if you are Goy, the Midgai, or a Jew, right? They look at the Orla.
No, opposite. He says if the whole reason we don't even care. bris milah has nothing to do with anything. What's the problem? The problem is the guy can remember. Let's say he's converting. He says, "Look, I work at the cemetery, right? I deal with dead bodies all the day, or I work at the morgue, right? I work at the morgue, and I was tummy every day. I got my bris milah, and I went to the mikveh. I became a Jew. I can eat the Korban Pesach at night. Why? Because me, when I'm work at the morgue and I'm a guy, I don't become tummy. There's no tumas mace when it comes to a guy if he's handling dead bodies. So he's going to think, last year I worked at the morgue up until the Korban Pesach, and then I got my bris milah, right? And then I just, I went to the mikvah, and then I even the Korban Pesach at night. So we're concerned that the next year he's going to assume the same thing. I just go to the mikvah, and that takes care of all my, dealing with, working at the morgue. But that's not true. The difference was the previous year you were a guy. Right? When you're a guy, you don't become tummy.
Yeah, but I'm talking about Bet Hillel. They look at the Orla. That's it. They look at the Orla.
No, there's nothing intrinsic tummy about the Orla. He only says it was like a cute way of saying it, right? Like you leave the Orla, it's like you leave it was a way of remembering it. But he holds that really, Beis Hillel holds, there's no difference. Orla is normally fine. The whole issue is people are going to confuse it with Tuma. And therefore, they're going to confuse basically the halachas of a guy becoming Tameh, right? With a Jew becoming Tameh. They're going to think it's like, just like a guy can't become Tameh, so too a Jew doesn't. But we don't want them to think that. So therefore, we're going to say, hey, you have a bris milah, right? You got to wait 7 days, right? But it's nothing to do with the Orla. The Orla itself is fine. But when it comes to a Jew, you have a bris milah, it's no problem. Right? That was it. Like Nechlu Beis Shammai Beis Hillel al Orla Yisrael, right? They don't argue. They both agree. Go to the mikvah, right, and then you're fine because there's nothing wrong with a bris milah. It doesn't make you tummy by having a bris milah. The whole issue is a person converting, and he was with dead bodies before. He's going to think, well, last year wasn't a problem, so this year's also not a problem. So that was the whole thing.
Is proof of that because a woman can convert and doesn't have a problem, and she's not going to be able. I mean, a woman should be able to convert and eat it right away with no problem of Orla, right?
Right.
Very good.
No, so you're asking a good question.
Yeah, that's
right?
a good one.
So it could be that it doesn't just mean that the bris milah. It could just mean it's like a way of remembering that one who is misgayer has to wait 7 days, right?
So what Bet Hillel will say about the woman?
Right. So it could be Beis Hillel will say the same thing, right? You're also tummy.
No, 37. According to what you said, should be 7 days.
Right.
Also for a woman.
But it should be that a woman, right, who is misgayeres also has to wait 7 days, according to what we're
right.
So, fine. I don't know if it said in the notes or Tosas or anything, but yeah, good point. Very good point. Amar Rava says Rava, right, 2 dots, right in the middle of Tzadi Beis Amud Aleph. Orel, Hazah, V'Zamal. When it comes to an Orel, right, a person who did not have a bris milah, or Hazah, sprinkling Mutsunsiya and Shabbos, Hazah, and Izamal, or carrying a knife, right, through just only the Rabbanans, Hamidu Divrayim b'makom kares, right? The Torah says, even though we're dealing with a kares, a potential kares, too bad, the halacha stands, we stand by our gedarim, our derabbanans, all right? And we'll explain each case. However, when it comes to an einain, u'metzora u'beis pras, when it comes to other derabbanans, such as an einain, or metzora, or beis pras, those get overridden by a potential kares. So 3 and 3. Let's see. Orel hod amran. So Orel, we just said, according to Beis Hillel, right? Even though, right, person is chayiv to go ahead and bring a Korban Pesach, we say no. You just became a ger. You missed it. Sorry, that's it. Because we're standing on Darabanan. Our Gzer Darabanan stands, and you don't bring the Korban Pesach, right? You need to wait 7 days after you get your bris milah, after you misgayer. Hazah, what I'm speaking, Domer Mar. Hazah shvus. The halacha normally is when you go ahead and sprinkle, it's a shvus, right? You're misaking a person. When you sprinkle for him on his 3rd or 7th day, he becomes tahor, right? So if that comes out on Shabbos, and it's not doicha Shabbos to allow a person of Erev Pesach came on Shabbos to become tahor and eat the Korban Pesach. So we don't say that the sprinkling overrides Shabbos. Rather, we stay on the halacha derabanan of one is not allowed to do hazah, which is only derabanan, on Shabbos, even if it's going to mean he's going to miss his Korban Pesach. And izemel. What about a izemel, which is a knife, which is used for bris milah? The tiny we learn in Rise Kshem Shein Mevin Oisa Derech Rosh Hashanah Kach in Mevin Oisa Derech Gogos the Derech Chatzev Derech Hafevos. Just like you can't carry a bris milah knife out in Rosh Hashanah, you can't even carry it in a Darabanan area, in a Carmelis, on roofs, right? All these areas or alleyways, right? Even though these are Darabanans, you cannot go ahead and carry a bris milah knife. Now, what's the issue with the bris milah knife? Now, a person has an obligation to go ahead and give his son a bris milah, and he doesn't, right? He is not allowed to go ahead and bring the Korban Pesach. So therefore, by not allowing him to carry the knife to give a bris milah to a son, we are preventing him from bringing the Korban Pesach, which carries a kares. Nevertheless, too bad, we stand by our derabanans and say you're not allowed to.
The father can't bring the Korban Pesach? That's
Correct.
all?
Yes, right.
Cool.
Didn't we pass in there like Rabbi Eliezer with the knife that you can bring it, derech chatzeros and the gagos and all that?
So we said, no, that was for the shechita. That was for the shechita of the Korban Pesach. That was for the shechita of the Korban Pesach. This is for the milah, right? This is Rashi here, right? This is for the milah of the child, right? Because it's not the kares over here is not referring to you get a kares for not giving your son a bris milah, because there's no kares on the 8th, right? Because you only give on Shabbos on the 8th day, right? If this baby doesn't get on the 8th day, there's no chiv kares. There's only when you become a gadol, when you become 13, right? Right. So look at Rashi for a second. Derech chatzeros. So afagad the reshuyah is derabanan. Even though right carrying the reshuyah is only derabanan, the yidcha pischo, and therefore his pesach will be pushed off. Why? Shim yesh lo zachar lamul ma'akvo. Right. If he has a male son to go ahead and give a bris milah to, it's ma'akiv. It pushes it off. The tanya milah zacharav avada ma'akvin as a pesach. Right. But like the lemesha b'kares arel, I can't say the kares because of arel zachar shelo yomov. Right. The milah zachar b'shabbos. Right. Fine. So, right. So I think that which we said, you go ahead and carry it in a certain way, right? We said, right, you attach it to your clothes or whatever it was. That was referring to the knife of the Korban Pesach itself, but not referring to a knife to go ahead and give a bris milah. Now, in order to make a person fit to bring the Korban Pesach. Fine. And now the three cases where we say, okay, let's override the derabbanans. Even though there's a halakha derabbanan, we'll say let's push off these derabbanans in order to allow a person to go ahead and bring a Korban Pesach. So einain had amran. Einain we just said earlier, right? We said the person is einain deraisa during the day, and at night it's midrabbanan. And we say forget that midrabbanan at night. Allow him to do the Korban Pesach, just not other kosher, right? So that was one derabbanan that we say is overridden. And mitzara mai, what's the case of mitzara? The time of the deraisa, mitzara shechal shmini shalei berev Pesach. A Mitzorah that is 8th day comes on Erev Pesach. So what is it? He's a Mitzorah on the 8th day. He brings his karbanos, right? He goes up to the Mikdash by Shar Nikanor, sticks his hands and thumbs in him, becomes tar, right? And then he can bring his Korban Pesach. But all of a sudden, he saw a carry that day. So a person sees carry, a Baal carry is not allowed in that area. Toivel v'yoichel, right? He is Toivel. He can be Toivel, and then he doesn't have to go ahead and do his karbanos. He is tayvel and eat the Korban Pesach at night. And however, the Chachamim say no. Even though normally a Tful Yom cannot go ahead and enter right by the Mikdash by the Shar Nikanor Zed Nichnas. He is allowed to. We override the normal rule that a person who a person who is a Balkari can enter the Mikdash Zed Nichnas. Why? So Mutav Yavo Aseh Sheyesh Bakares. The Yidcha Aseh Shem Bakares, right? Let the Aseh that has a kares, i.e. the Korban Pesach, push off the only derabanan of a Balkari entering by the Shar Nikanor. But Rabbi Yechon says, Rabbi Yechon, Dar Torah Filu Aseh Ein Bo, even midiraisa, there's no Aseh Shnei. The pasuk says, Vayamod Yahishafat Bekal Yehuda V'Yushalayim Bebeis Hashem Lifnei HaChatzer HaChadasha. He said he stood before the Chatzer Chadasha. So my Chatzer Chadasha, Sachit Shabadav Aviyamru. All right, they were mechadish. They said, Allah Tful Yom Lo Yikanais B'Machna Levia. Right, the Tful Yom can I even mention enter the Machna Levia, which includes the Shar Nikanor, which as you learned earlier, the Shar Nikanor is actually really considered to be outside the Machna Shechina, because to allow the Mitzaras and those people to come in. However, normally they were geyser that Tful Yom cannot enter there, and that is overridden to allow a Tful Yom to go there in order for, if he's a Mitzorah, that he can go ahead and bring his Korban Pesach in the evening. And Beis HaPras, what's the case? The time we did in the Mishnah, the Shavin, Beis Sham, Beis Hillel, both Beis Sham and Beis Hillel agree, Shed Baikim, turn the page, La'oise Pesach, Vein Baikim La'ichle Truma. That when it comes to Beis HaPras is basically a field, as Machlokes, but basically for most, it's a field that was plowed over. It was plowed over, and therefore there's bone fragments throughout. The person might become tamei. That you can go ahead and check it in order for me to go ahead and bring my Korban Pesach. But when it comes to Truma, we say, you know what, find a different route. So my boikim, what does it mean to be boikim? So it says, Rav Yehuda Amar Shmuel Manafech Besapras V'Holech, right? You go ahead, you blow on the ground, you see if there's any bone fragments, etzem kasaira, right, the size of a barley, and if you see if anything there. If not, you can go ahead and walk that way, and therefore there's no bones, you won't become tameh. And Rav Yehuda bar Abayi Mishmei, Rav Yehuda Amar Beisapras Shenidash Tahor, right? So it says no, if it was enough people that they checked, see how many people walked on, if it was trampled enough upon, therefore there is no. If there was any bones at all, they would have been kicked away by all the usage of there, and therefore it is Torah, and therefore, but we only allow it to be Torah when it comes to Karim Pesach. But when it comes to other Kachim, then, or Oichle Truma, then we don't allow it. So therefore, we see we override this Derabanan, and we get to allow them to bring the Karim Pesach because it carries a Kares. So a Kares. So Hadran Allah. Now, so next parak. So me, Shahaya, Tameh, person was Tameh, B'derech Chayka, or he was far away, right? Those are two cases in the Torah, right? Right. I'm just reading for the pasuk on the side of the Torah. It says, pasuk says, right? Daber b'nei Yisrael leimor ish ki yatame lenefesh o b'derech chayka lachem, right? It says if you're tame or you're too far, right? Then it mentions go ahead and bring the Pesach Shen. So it mentions those two cases. So Misha yatame, a person was tame on the 14th, and therefore he wasn't able to go ahead and bring his Korban Pesach or b'derech chayka. He was too far away. He wasn't able to get there in time. Velo asas rishon, and he did not go ahead and bring the Korban Pesach on his proper time on a rishon on the first date, i.e., the 14th of Nisan. Yasas Hasheni, go ahead and bring it a month later on ER on the 14th. Shagag onenas, if there was some sort of shageg or oines, right, whatever, it wasn't something against his control, right, or he made a mistake, right, he thought it was the wrong date. Velo asas rishon, Yasas Hasheni, do the second one. If that's the case, if that's the case, why the Torah give those two examples? We'll soon see, because these are pater from kares and the others are chayav kares. We'll have to understand the line, because obviously a person who is shegeg or onus, as we know, is not chayav kares, right? Can't be chayav kares for something which is unintentional, right? So we'll have to understand that line in the Gemara. So zok the Gemara, itmar. If he was if he was far away and he shechted him and they threw the blood from him. Rav Nachman Omar Hurtza, Rav Sheish Omar Lo Hurtza. Let's say this. I wasn't around Erev Pesach. I was too far away, right? But I'll get there later. But I wasn't around during the time. Can I send somebody to go ahead and basically bring the Korban Pesach on my behalf, right? If I was far away and they brought it for me, does it work or not? So Rav Nachman says Hurtza, and Rav Sheish Amar Lo Hurtza. What's the reason? So Rav Nachman Amar Hurtza, Michas Hu Dechas Rachman Alav, right? Really, it works. So really, what about Pesach Sheni? What was the whole talk about Pesach Sheni? So really, the Torah has Rachmanis on person, right? And allows him to go ahead and bring a Pesach Sheni. But if he wants, if he somehow he can send the shaliach to go ahead and do it for him, then it would be okay. And therefore, by the time I get there at night, I can eat the Korban Pesach and it would work. And Rav Sheish Amar Lo Hurtza, Midcha Dechia Rachmana Ketami. According to Rav Sheish says, no, we compare being far to Tameh. Just like a person who's Tameh, when he's referring to Tameh, he's referring to he's also going to be Tameh at night, and therefore you're not allowed to do it yet because the Torah says wait till Pesach Sheni. So too, a person's too far, even if I have someone bring it for me and I'm going to get there right at Shkia, I'm going to be able to eat the Korban Pesach night. Too bad, doesn't count. And Amar Rav Nachman, says Rav Nachman, so who says Hortza, who says it works. How do we know at the time we're learning Mishnah? Let's look at our Mishnah. If a person was far away, if he was Tameh or if he was far, right? So law says Rishon, Yasa Sheni, right? If he was too far and he didn't do the first one, go ahead and do the second one. Michlal, sounds like over there that if he was too far and he didn't do the first one, but if he wanted to, the abba of it. If you wanted to do it, i.e., if I send someone to do it for me and I'll meet you up there at Shkia, it would work. No, he says no. Ihachi seifa diktani. Wait, So let's look at the reading of the Mishnah. It says, the Seva says, the Kani Shagig on Nenas Veloasa, a person was Shagig, let's say he thought it was the wrong day, or Nenas, or a complete accident, right? Something happened that was unpreventable. The law says a Rishon, and then he didn't do it. Yasa Sheni, then he goes ahead and does Pesach Sheni. Now, wait, so you're the same way you said he didn't have to, but if he did it, right, he could have done it. So how could you say, right? But if he was Eines or Shagag, right? But he did it. So Hari Shagav, Hari Eines. You just said he was talking about a case of he was Shagav Eines. So Ella, Mazid Katani Badayu. Rather, the case of Mazid was included in it, right? Not only if he's Shagag or Ananas, but even if he was Mazid, even if he purposely, he was in Yerushalayim, right? He's just too lazy to do anything, right? Even Mazid, it says over there, and that's what's right there. Hachanami, Einen Katani Badayu. And therefore we say, in the first part of the Mishnah, when it says Mishaya Tameh Obeder Chayka, it also includes something else. Who does it come include? A person who was Tameh, if he was Tameh or if he was far away, or if he was an Onein, right? And that was the case referring to there. And therefore, it doesn't mean that if he was too far away, he can send someone to do it. Rather, if he was an Onein, and then someone else does it for him, he can be Yaitse, as we saw in the previous Mishnah. But if he's Derech Chayka, no, then you can't do it. Derech Chayka is the same as Tameh. The Torah doesn't allow you to bring it on the first. You have to go ahead and bring it on Pesach Sheni. And Rav Ashi actually, if you look at the lashon of our Mishnah, also it sounds like we're adding cases that are not explicitly stated. I.e., Onain is included in the Resha, and the case of Shagag Venenas is also included in Bezid. Why? These are chayev. These are pater from kares, and these are chayev from kares. Now, which case they're going on? If you're talking about Shagag Venenas, that they're chayev for kares. Shagag Venenas b'nei kares. Can be chayev for kares? They can't. Elav. Amazid va'oinen. Rather, it's referring to a person who was mazid or oinen. A person who's oinen, he has no excuse not to do it at night because he can still bring it at night. He just can't offer it that day. He has someone bring it for him. Or a person who b'mazid was too lazy to do it. Rav Nachman it doesn't mean that mazid va'oinen. Rather, it's only referring to mazid. And really, it shouldn't just said. It should have said chayiv. So because it says the word chayavin, elu chayavin, sounds like plural. So why did it say the word chayavin or chayiv? They're only referring to a mazid. Since it says in the Resha pturin, plural, therefore it says the seifa chayavin, but only referring to one case, not a person in oinen. Only if a person was mazid, right? He was too lazy. He was in Yerushalayim. He was tahor. He was too lazy to bring Korban Pesach. Such a person is chayiv kares as opposed to the other cases. All right, we'll stop here. Everyone should have a wonderful day, and tomorrow, Mitzvah Hashem, regular time. Shkoyach.
Have a great day.